This video accompanies a blog that has to do with a period of time right after your child passes away, and you haven't had parent hasn't had an opportunity to really process any of it. You know, there's such a busyness that accompanies all the preparations that are underway, and when the phone stops ringing and the memorial services are over and the casseroles are gone, you're left with a lot of silence and a lot of time. Unfortunately, there's some parents who don't have much time to process any of it. They are required to go right back to work, and if you have that opportunity to be home and have at least some time to go through some of the grieving process, you're you are faced with a lot. Many bereaved parents discuss the fact that the darkness that is in front of them feels like similar to a bottomless pit, a place that is so far down that they don't see how they can get themselves out of it. There's no way to see, the colors in their world don't exist anymore. Everything turned gray. So when they look out, it doesn't matter how beautiful it is. They don't see it. They don't see how the future is going to unfold in any positive way. And even if they have other children and loving family members and other wonderful blessings in their life, they still haven't processed what's happened with this one child that they lost. And so it completely moves them into a space they've never been into, and frankly they'll never go back to where they were. We don't ever return to it. So it's a very very, I would call it dark time. I've often shared the experience that I had following the memorial service for our daughter, the funeral and memorial service for our daughter. The reason I do it is because, having done it many times, I found out it's similar to a lot of people. The story may not be exactly the same, but they've done something similar. And also, I'd like to put one caveat in here. I'm not talking about depression or clinical depression. Those are things that if that is what you think you're experiencing, you definitely need to go speak to a professional. Someone who can help you and diagnose you. What I'm talking about is extreme grief, and it's a very black, dark place. It can last for a long, long time. If you can't tell the difference, or you don't think you can, again, I would go take your story to someone who's a professional and could help you with it. What I'm going to talk about is the period of time, as I was saying, where I didn't know what to do. The casseroles were gone from the refrigerator. The phone had stopped ringing. There was a whole lot of quiet in my life. I had taken time off from my work because I wasn't ready to do anything. I could hardly even speak to anybody. But what happened was, when everyone left the house, I would go into my room and sit in the corner and light a candle on the floor and cry until it turned into a really loud wail. And this would go on, and I'd wail and wail and wail, and it went on for what I would call 40 days and 40 nights. Now, the thing that I gained from this is that while my heart and all my emotion was being released, what I knew was that, and it was exhausting, I wasn't doing anything except releasing the emotion, which I think was a healthy thing. But I also wasn't moving in any forward direction. So after that period of time, I realized I can't do this every day. I have gotten a lot of this out of my system. I'm kind of a walking zombie. I figured I had probably changed my eyesight after all this because I cried so much. But I knew it was something I needed to do. I also knew that at the end of that time, I needed to determine where I was going to go from here. I just couldn't continue doing this. And so that's when I decided it was time to take the next steps. And I wasn't sure what it was going to be, but I knew it was time. If you know somebody who's experienced something like this or going through something like that, and you recognize those kind of signs that I just explained, there's several things I would recommend. If you know you need to, move in a new direction or in an active direction, I would suggest finding a group of bereaved parents in your local area and go. Oftentimes they meet once a week. Join them and sit together with others who are going through it. It's really helpful to know that you're not the only one. And when all of this is over and all that wonderful support is gone, it is so isolating. And there's sometimes that you feel like there's no one to talk to, and or if there is, they don't really understand what's in your heart. Bless them, they don't know how you're feeling, and you just want to say some things and know that someone else feels exactly the same way. Now, you can do that in your local community. You can also do that. You can find groups like that online. And online, I mean, I know that on Facebook, which was my experience, there's many good groups. Some are public. In other words, everyone can see what's written, and some are private. I would recommend a private group, and some private groups are really, really large. You just have to ask to belong. But the nice thing about that is what happens on there does not go through your public news feed, so that people in your regular life or your work life or anyone is aware of the topics that are being discussed. It can be really, really helpful, I think. I think the other thing that is really valuable is to read. I read after this period of time that I discussed a little bit ago. I read well over 100 books, and I've always been an avid reader, so it was a natural thing for me to go to books. But and I had been told many years ago by my mom, through hard times, who said whenever you are having trouble in your life or have concerns on any subject, remember to go to a book, because somewhere in the world someone has written about it, either has perspective or something that you can that will help you. So that's always been with me, and that's exactly what I did. I really pulled anything I could find on the subject. I had gone down to visit my parents who were vacationing, which they did yearly, in Arizona, the Scottsdale kind of Mesa area. And I would always go down or take our kids down. We'd go down for a little vacation. Well, in this case, I went down, and first thing I did was head to the bookstore and picked a couple of titles, read those. And that was the beginning of the second part of my journey. Read all kinds of things that I would never probably ever have pulled off a shelf. I allowed myself to be open to all points of view. I didn't prejudge. It had to be a certain faith. It had to be highly religious. It had to be non-religious. It had to be spiritual, non-spiritual. It didn't matter. I opened my mind to all of it, and I read all of it. Anyway, the bottom line with that is that after reading close to 100 books, there were probably about 10% of those that resonated. So I think that's probably representative of things in general. Not everything's going to resonate with everybody. Those 10 I've shared with other bereaved parents, for those that aren't going to read 100 books, in the hope that maybe one of those or more could be of help to them. What happened was it got me prepared for the next step in my journey. And had I not done that, I wouldn't have been open to all these different lines of thinking. I wouldn't have been probably open to the fact that maybe there was a way through this. So I highly recommend reading. It as they told you when you were young, readers are leaders, but not only are they leaders, sometimes you can lead yourself out of a very dark place. One of the things I think helps is to be able to share your feelings, whether it's out loud or silently. Pay respects to your child and keep their memory alive. And for many, there's not a cemetery or a place nearby where they can do that. Their child, if they were buried, they're not near. You can't go visit. You can't leave flowers. You can't do that. So if there isn't, create your own. Create a spot in your house, just a little little spot where maybe you have their picture and a candle. And, in my case, I buy flowers every week in memory of my daughter. Every week. Every Friday, there are new flowers on our counter. And I talk to her when I get them, and I think of her because she had such a bright and sunny personality. And I'll tell you, it does make me smile, and oftentimes it makes me cry. But it's an emotion of love that will never die. That love never dies. And I want to acknowledge her. If I could go to a graveside, I would go there. In my case, I can't. So I would encourage people to do that. Whether you do a prayer, whether you just talk, whether you meditate, it doesn't matter. It's that you allow yourself that connection. I think I call it good for the soul. It's good for your heart. It reminds you that your connection is eternal. Another thing you can do, and sometimes this is done for people. This was done for us when our daughter passed. A memorial wall on Facebook was made for her. At the time, I hardly even knew how to use Facebook. So, that's how little I knew. It was set up for her and those people who knew her, and friends of our family and all, joined that wall. So anything that was posted there in any time following that is what I would consider to be a place of memory. I believe if you want to put something there, anyone can do it. But as a parent, if you want to do that, that should be a very safe space that you can go and do that without any judgment from anyone else. If by chance there's anyone who had joined that group who thinks you should be done doing that, I would say they ought to leave the group then, because I believe it is a parent's full right to have a place to remember their child. We often spend, whether it's on a Facebook situation or other areas in our life, where we're always asking about everyone else's children. Why? Because we're interested. We are interested in them. Because our child has died does not mean that we have forgotten that they existed or that we don't have memories. Yes, we can't say what's going on right now, but we can say, I remember when, I remember this. What happens often, nobody has memories or shares them with you anymore. So once they're gone, wow, that's horribly isolating. So if you have a wall, or a wall was set up for you, go there and do that, and don't worry about anything. That's what that's for. One of the things I think I hear hands down above other tough situations for bereaved parents is the fact that after this tragedy happens, they no longer hear from people that were in their child's life. And I think that if you are a support person, that if it's in your heart to just drop them a little text once in a while, or a little whatever, something to say, hey, I was just thinking about you today, or I was thinking about your child and remember this, and I wanted to share that with you, and just want to let you know I'll always treasure that, and you guys will always be in our hearts. These are the sorts of things, because what it does is it's like an appendage has been amputated when this happens. Your heart is amputated. Everything in your life is. And so receiving something like that, I don't think people understand how greatly appreciated it is. You just don't ever forget it when someone does that. People will say, what can I do to help my friend, my family member, somebody who's going through this? What do I do to help them? And I would say reach out. We will reach out to strangers all the time. We'll put money in the bin for this or money for that, when in reality there's people in our own lives, whether we haven't seen them for a week, months, years, we actually know these people, and we might have actually known their children. start with those people. It's a wonderful feeling to reach out. And I will tell you, the amount of good it does is untold. You can't measure how good it feels for a person who is going through the most devastating thing anyone can go through, to know that there is someone who says, would you like to have a cup of coffee? Do you want to talk about it? And if the person doesn't matter. Share memories about the child. Just let them know you're there. And you want to go for a walk, cup of coffee, whatever. Um, Really, those are nuggets of gold that most people don't even realize they carry in their own little pocket and can give freely to someone.